Welcome. Welcome to my weekly live stream show, Co-Design Work with Wonder. I'm June Beha, CEO of BayhaGroup, and I wanted to share the why of what I do. And so the mission for BayhaGroup is we are galvanized by the need for equity and social justice. We support under-resourced public schools by securing millions of dollars in grant funding to implement programs inspiring youth to claim their power and use their voice as heroes in their life's journey. And so this has been a really important part of the journey, especially this year. This is the last live stream of the year, and we have a very special guest today. The topic is Plan and Win Federal Grants. And I wouldn't really be talking about federal grants if we didn't really just apply for one. And my collaborative partner is Kelly Cooper, who I'm going to bring on right now. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, June.
So you and I and our team recently applied for a federal grant. And so it's definitely top of mind. And we were planning, every third Thursday on the live stream show, I'm going to be talking about grant getting with June. And so this one was just timely because we just finished. We submitted a federal FIPSE, F-I-P-S-E, which I don't know what it stands for, but Kelly's going to help me out. Do you remember what it stands for?
It stands for, this would be the most amazing grant to get in the world.
Exactly. And so we really want it. It is something that we feel really strongly about. It works really well with this work with Work Wonder. It's perfect. When we saw it, we thought, oh my gosh, it was written exactly for what we're doing. And it's called a technology-based career education program. A career exploration program. So we applied for it. We're waiting right now. So Kelly, plan and win federal grants. So you and I separately have written and worked on a number of federal grants. What would we tell our folks watching us today in terms of how to plan and then how to win federal grants?
I think, June, that the area that people tend to underestimate is the planning part. Sometimes we sign up for lists and receive a grant notification, an RFP, request for proposals, and get excited about that particular project. We especially get excited because grants at the federal level are a lot of money and can do amazing things and afford amazing opportunities for our passion projects. However, really, a federal grant should be a part of your overall strategy. The federal grant helps you to leverage perhaps smaller grants that you've been working on, and a federal grant helps you to scale to where you can serve broader constituent groups and at a deeper level. They're exciting, but they're not really something to jump into. They're something to plan for.
That is such sage advice. And it's actually something we did. We were in a position where for a number of years, working with a school district in Southern California, have been doing state grants. And the vision was to have more career exploration. So when I said that this was really perfect, it really was. And one of the first steps was just to see if the district where we were working with, if they were qualified. Because as a for-profit, BayhaGroup was not qualified to apply on our own. We needed to have a partner who was eligible. And so one of the first steps when you and I first saw FIPSE was just to see, oh my gosh, does the district qualify? And so that was a process just to figure out, does the district have something called a SAMgov account? So that's one of the first pieces that I would give as planning is if you really want a federal grant, you need to register with SAM.gov and have a DUNS number, D-U-N-S. It's Duns and Bradstreet. It's a way to register. Then when I did it for BayhaGroup, I had to get a certified and notarized letter and make sure that it was legitimate, that I had control of BayhaGroup and that I could apply for federal grants. as a company. But the district, thankfully, we were so happy when we found out that the district was already registered with SAM.gov, and that the people who ran that account could just add me to the account so that I could actually write and submit the grant on their behalf. And
I
so
should add in here, June, if you don't mind, that if you go to apply for SAM and DUNS and your deadline is coming up, be very careful, because it's a not fun, a little bit of a frustrating process that takes a good 30 days. You should always leave about 6 weeks lead time to take care of the paperwork portion of the pre-planning.
So exactly. So if you're watching this and you have any hope or interest in getting a federal grant someday, do that. That's the first step. Really go into sam.gov, fill out for your organization the account for SAM, and then do the DUNS number, all those different steps, and get registered, because then you know you're ready. If you see something that you want to apply for, you know you're eligible, because at least you're eligible to apply. And I always say it's like a video game. You can't even see the application unless you have all of these accounts. We couldn't see the full application for FIPSI until we got registered, and then I got approval from the district, and then I could hit that apply button and see the full application.
And if you're thinking about just looking around to see if this is of interest to you, go to beta.sam.gov, beta.sam.gov, and you can see the general idea of the announcements. You can sort by location, you can sort by the type of grant that you might be interested in, and this will give you kind of an overview of what to expect before you make the commitment to spend the time to get your DUNS and SAM and potentially apply.
All right, so let's say, oh, thanks. How does the federal workload look like? So,
I think the question relates to how much work is involved in putting the grant together. And surprisingly enough, although the grants are a lot of money, and although the process is a bit cumbersome to prepare, the actual grant is often not that long. And the reason is it's a national grant, and there are a lot of experts in the field, and they know that everybody is busy. But the one thing that you want to keep in mind is that your grant reviewer is going to be different than you might be used to. Your grant reviewer is going to potentially come out of Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., there are a lot of, one might say, political agendas. And as such, you want to not be thinking that it's a local person who really understands your state or your county or your project. You can assume that this is a person that is an expert in their field, so you don't have to define everything and talk as though you're introducing a newbie or a beginner. Whoever's reading your grant really knows their stuff, and they don't live in the state that you live. So just a couple of things to keep in mind.
Yes, it's really important to describe your community, who you're trying to serve, really paint the picture. So one of the things that when we were writing this recent grant, we really wanted to captivate and inspire with what we wanted to promote or propose, because it was an innovative idea. This is what Kelly said was, this is the grant to get, right? The one that we applied for. And we really wanted the reader to want to keep reading. And it was a 25-page, double-spaced, 1-inch margin. We could only choose 3 different fonts, and it had to be 12 point. And it was very, very specific what they wanted from us. But what I was telling our interns is, it's like writing a research paper, and you could get millions of dollars ultimately, right?
You know, June, can I interrupt you for just 1 second? Because I think one of your strategies is really important. And that is, talk a little bit about how when the grant is nearly done, you go back through the RFP and take a look at the keywords and see how you've incorporated them into the narrative. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, I like to call it sprinkling, right? So you go through and you find the keywords that they say that they want to have addressed. I'm always thinking of the people who are on the other side scoring it. There's a scoring rubric, and you're collecting points, right? So you think about, you want to make it easy for the reader, and you want to make sure they see the correct sections so they don't have to work very hard. And then you put in those keywords. And I literally have cut and pasted that into the proposal to make sure that I've captured them all because I want to collect as many points as possible and make it as easy for the reader.
I think that you just assume that the reader is on their fourth or fifth cup of coffee and they were thrilled to be picked as a volunteer. They're not paid to read this, and now they're wondering if maybe pizza would have been a better idea. And so you want to really key into their passion for education, if that's your subject area, their passion for really giving to the community and for what the community is going to receive. It's never for your benefit. And please, it's never for your ego. Occasionally, as a grant reviewer, I have read proposals where the person spent more time telling me about how awesome they are rather than how amazing the project will be for the serving community.
So then what's another piece? Emily, is there, I believe there's questions coming from our, whoa, it was just there. So how is it that the federal government pays for grants? That's a great question.
Well, grants money comes out of legislation. And let's just say, for example, in the context of workforce, which is where June and I typically apply, legislation determines that we need to do something. In this case, that we need to really bring industry and education together so that the new trends and the new opportunities in the workforce come into the realm of education. And as such, there are different types or styles. For example, the NIH is all about health. The NSF is all about science and technology. It really depends on your area and resourcing the grant that's best serving your project. You don't want to stretch too much because the legislation has set aside funding to do a specific thing. You have a lot of creativity in how it is that you do it, but the expectation is what you submit fits the intent of the grant.
And for me, getting into grant writing was a way to really change policy, because if you bring in a lot of money to a community, I like to use it as a lever of change. And so it is something that I get excited about with regard to, you get the parameters of what the grant says you need to do. However, the creativity of how to do it, who to work with, and how, that's the really fun and creative part. And that's where you and I had a lot of fun writing this last grant together, because we got to just be really creative and talk about, so just so you all know, we proposed to serve 400 young people a year doing Work Wonder. We called it a different name for the community where we were working. However, it's really the idea of serving young people and getting them paid to learn something that we, in the process of this, we came up with workplace intelligence. So this was through one of our brainstorming. We said, we don't really like the term soft skills. We don't really like these other things that people have been saying, but let's do something that's, let's say, emotional intelligence. We were sort of inspired by that term. And we thought, what if we could do something that was similar? And so I believe you coined it, Kelly. You're like, what about
WQ? What about WQ for workplace intelligence? Because in the world of work that's changing so radically right now, it's not about just soft skills or just technical knowledge. And it's not even only about EQ, about emotional intelligence, but it's about workplace intelligence and how it is that we work in today's world, and how it is that we, in our passion place, which is education with youth, how it is that we can help people understand and prepare for what's coming next. And that's the exciting thing about federal grants as well, because a state grant typically is about implementation. Here are some things that we think need to be done in our state, and come up with a great idea, a work plan, a budget, and how it is that you're going to assess. And if you meet our criteria, there's a good chance that we'll fund you. Whereas the federal grants are different. They're come up with what we really need, what changes everything, what revolutionizes what we're doing, where it is that we're going to be 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years from now. And if you can explain that to us in a way that we can sell it to the legislature, then we're going to give you the money to give it a try. Another thing is the byproduct. The byproduct of federal funding is really a second win for teachers, because there's so many great projects and programs that the regular budget simply doesn't provide for. A way to get trained, a way to get educated for students to, go over wild different. I mean, just today, June and I met with a group that's going to be introducing the students in the project to all kinds of animation studios and working across industries. If you were an educator or if you're a parent and you said to yourself, this is what I would do to really make a contribution, to really, really contribute to education, to help the youth to, be socially aware and responsible and leaders in their communities, a federal grant is a good way to get there.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about let's see, I'm going to answer this question after. How do I know what my chances are? But before that, I feel like intellectual property, we had talked about it a little bit. So Kelly, could you let us know about what happens to intellectual property with regard to federal versus state or local grants?
A lot of the state and local grants want to be the owner of the product that you create, and the feds do not. The National Science Foundation is famous for, you created, it's yours. We want you to just create it. And a lot of the other federal grants are the same. You have the opportunity to open source or to open education resource through Creative Commons your work. You have the opportunity to brand your work. You have the opportunity to share it statewide and to share it nationally with authorship. The feds in their grants are not going to make any requirement regarding intellectual property, whereas at the state level and at the local level, you'll often see in the fine print that the software that you create for career exploration will be owned all or in part by the state or the local entity. That's not always the case. However, a lot of the time it is. And because the federal grants are more about innovation, they know that you can't really predetermine what the product is going to be at the end, and they don't ask to own it.
Yeah, I mean, they have innovation grants. So there's small business innovation grants that I've applied for. And their whole part is that they want you to own that. They want to treat it as seed money. And so it is exciting, federal grants. So one of the questions was, how do you know what your chances are of getting them?
I would say that the tougher the grant, the bigger your chance. And some of them are tough. So the FIPSI grant that we applied for is one of those, you just won the Academy Awards grants. And as such, we would just be thrilled and probably make up a mock Academy Award statue and put it on our shelf were we to win that grant. However, in all cases, the more complex the grant or the more comfortable you are in the area of the grant, the higher your chances are, because you're able to speak knowledgeably, you have history there. It could be that you have seed projects that you've started. I will tell you on the flip side of that question, when I think your chances are lower for getting a federal grant. I think your chances are lower for getting a federal grant if it's a stretch. If you're saying, I pretty much know this topic and I think I know somebody that can help, because the experienced reader is going to be aware that you're just not quite there, and that's going to translate to you're not quite ready. If you see a federal grant that you're not quite ready for, we encourage you to get a state or a local grant as practice, and then go back to the federal grant and say, for the last year, we've done this and this and this to prepare for this opportunity. Here's what we've learned. Here's what we want to do. We are ready. And then you'll have a much better chance. But if you see a federal grant and say to yourself, wow, this is kind of complicated, just know that the number of applicants will be cut in half because people are busy and they won't want to deal with the 4 million little checkboxes.
There's a lot of checkboxes. So I feel like we could keep talking about this. However, we also have a party to attend. And so I feel like we're going to continue these conversations again every third Thursday. And the next one will be, I don't remember the date, but it's in January and it's the third Thursday. And
June, you remember every deadline date that a grant is due, but you don't.
I do know we'll be back. We'll have guests starting on Thursday, the first Thursday after we come back. And in the meantime, we really want to wish you happy holidays. We thank all of the folks who have joined us today. Kelly, it's always fun. I've seen you all day. I've talked to you since 6 in the morning, and we've got our matching sweaters on. We're going to go party with some interns now. So I just wanted to wish everybody happy holidays. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next year.
Thanks, everybody.
Ready?